Just going to wait for everybody to start joining here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aidan, AIC candidate member and volunteer. I'll be moderating the session, AI Unboxed, Tools, Trends, and Ethical Frontiers. Quick disclaimer, all resources and materials provided are intended as educational and not as advice or authoritative. We recommend you obtain such advice as needed. The views and comments do not necessarily reflect that of AIC BC. Thank you as well to Jackson and Associates for supporting the session. The chat and video remain disabled for this webinar, and we'll incorporate questions at the end if time permits. We have a tight schedule this hour, so I'll be moving directly into the material. Before anything else, I want to frame today's conversation within CUSPAP because this is where AI intersects most directly with our professional responsibilities. AI is not entirely new to the standards. In fact, in CUSPAP 2024, under sections 3.15, the AVM definition, artificial intelligence is already identified as one of the technologies involved in automated valuation outputs. But CUSPAP 2026 introduces far more explicit direction on how AI-generated information must be treated. Under 7.5.1 VIII, 2026 states that a person preparing a report must not rely solely on AI-generated output when developing the report, including chatbot-style writing tools and image recognition programs that auto-assign condition or quality ratings, and confirm the credibility of any AI-generated information used. This appears under the reporting standard comments, and the principle's clear. AI can assist the workflow, but it cannot replace verification, analysis, or judgment. Next, under the consulting standard comments under sections 13.8.7 related to AVM assignments, artificial intelligence does not replace professional experience, expertise, or judgment, and the two subsections make this explicit. Cannot accept an AI-generated AVM result without confirming whether it's credible, and relying on AI-generated data without verification may jeopardize the credibility of the assignment itself. These additions reinforce a simple message that AI may produce an output, but credibility remains your responsibility. And that's the lens through which I encourage you to view today's presentation. With that standards framework in mind, let me introduce the presenters who will be guiding today's session. Our presenters today are Lloyd Funk, Paul Rayburn, and Jason Schellenberg. Lloyd is Director of Assessment Services for the Government of Manitoba, overseeing provincial valuation programs and mass appraisal systems. He also serves as a second-year member of the IAA Board of Directors, bringing a national and international perspective on assessment practices and emerging technologies. Paul is a Scenaria DAR-designated residential appraiser and certified appraisal reviewer based in British Columbia. He brings extensive experience in report credibility, methodology, ethics, and appraisal oversight. And Jason is a PAP, AACI, and partner specializing in commercial and agricultural valuation across Manitoba, with experience serving as an expert witness before tribunals and courts. Now that we've met the presenters, here's a brief overview of the perspectives they'll be sharing today. Lloyd will be speaking broadly about how AI is being used within municipal assessment workflows. Paul will focus on the perception of AI to the public, what's next for AI in the profession, the role of the appraisal community in general, the crossover between appraisal and data science, and practical use of AI tools. And finally, Jason will focus on the secure, confidential AI use, privacy considerations, and practical approaches to using AI tools responsibly in day-to-day valuation work. Together, these perspectives will provide a rounded view of tools, trends, risks, and professional expectations consistent with the evolving standards. With that context in place, let's begin. Lloyd, take it away.
All right, just making sure everyone can see my screen and hear me. I'm going to take that as a yes. So good afternoon, and thanks so much, Aidan. I'm honored to be a panel member at BC's AIC Association's webinar about artificial intelligence. Today, I'll share a little bit about how we're testing AI for use in property assessment in Manitoba. It's not in use right now, but we're looking at the viability of this technology and the opportunity to be more efficient and improve assessments. So just a few quick notes about our branch and the scope of our work. So we assess 449,000 properties, including real property, personal, and business assessments, totaling $139 billion in market value. This results in $1.4 billion in annual municipal and education tax revenue. We currently have a staff of 107 employees with a total FTE complement of 122.8. We work out of 10 district offices across Manitoba and a central office here in Winnipeg. Our clients include municipalities, school divisions, Northern Affairs communities, and the Government of Manitoba Department of Education and Early Childhood Learning. So what is the purpose of our project, our AI project, or the problem to solve? So we are required to conduct a biennial province-wide reassessment, which are resource intensive. There's an ever-increasing workload demand with ongoing property development and the need to continually review existing properties to maintain accuracy and fairness. So we need to be more efficient at what we're doing while continuing to be effective. The quality needs to be maintained or actually improved. We've added other streamlining functionality like high-resolution oblique imagery to re-inspect communities from the desktop rather than driving property to property. We're also building a tablet interface for assessors to update property characteristics rather than paper data collection and transcribing on computers back in the office. Our current reassessment process involves 30 assessors working on analysis and quality assurance for a 7-month period. This process is time-consuming and labor-intensive, and our branch is continuously looking for ways to improve our efficiency and best practices. We know that there are other methods of analyzing and determining assessed values. We had always wondered if our data was suitable for another type of analysis. Manitoba is very rural, and a lot of examples we saw using AI were jurisdictions like Toronto or Chicago, which are very urban with lots of data. We have municipalities, on the other hand, like Brenda Wascata, with a total of 323 single-family homes, and over a 2-year cycle, only 33 sales, and maybe 9 of those were usable last reassessment. So, other provinces have used AI and machine learning for assessment valuation with successful results. So we thought maybe this is possible for Manitoba. So what we really wanted to test is if machine learning will work with our data. Will it be more efficient, and will the quality of our assessments be improved? In traditional or classical mass appraisal valuation analysis, the data or variables are provided and a set of instructions or rules tell the computer exactly what to do with the data. Then the machine follows the rules set out by our assessor and produces the result or the answers. Machine learning is about teaching computers to learn from the data so they can make predictions. With machine learning, data is provided as well as the end result, in this case, the sale prices. We ask the computer to examine the data and end results and look for patterns and connections and develop its own set of rules that describe the relationship between the data and the sale prices. After the computer has learned these rules, we can then feed it new data it has never seen before, and the machine can apply the rules to predict outcomes for that new data, the values of the unsold properties. So here in this example, our objective is to determine the value of a property using features such as living area, neighborhood, building age, and so on. And we have 3 sold properties and their characteristics. The rules are not known, but the result is, which is the sale price. So we have the data and the result, which is fed into the machine learning model. The model then determines the rules or what we would call the valuation impact of the various data points of properties that would result in the estimated value. And in our case, the result is the assessment of all properties. So now we take the data, which is all the features, location, living area, building age, mechanical, plumbing, secondary buildings, and so on. We take all of these relevant characteristics of sold properties, then apply the rules, in this case, the value attributable to those property features, and the assessed value is then generated for all properties in that model segment. So similar to property assessment using non-machine learning models, the process, which is the process used in most North American jurisdictions, the sale prices are used to determine assessed values of all properties, even the sold properties. Then we use these generated rules, that is the model, to get the values of unsold properties. So here in this slide, you can see the workflow of developing a machine learning model. First, we need to collect the data for the model because the data is the main ingredient for the model. Then we need to do some cleaning and pre-processing before using the data for model training. The next step is training the model, and following that, we test the accuracy of the learned model. We go through steps 2, 3, and 4 iteratively until we achieve the desired accuracy. Finally, when we are satisfied the model is producing good results, we can go for deployment. So an important piece of machine learning valuation and the model process is that the valuation rules are based on a portion of the sold properties, in this case, 80% of the sales, and then the model is tested on the remaining 20% of the sold properties. Using this 80-20 rule, it mitigates the bias of the machine learning model building process. In our initial pilot project, the focus was on the city of Brandon, which is our most populated city in our assessable territory. Winnipeg's the capital, and they have their own assessing jurisdiction. So we chose Brandon for a few reasons. We wanted an area that was homogeneous with a lot of sales. There are very few properties with significant or unique external influences like waterfronts or special views. The buildings also have been recently inspected from our desktop review project, so the data is quite accurate. And also lastly, Brandon's market is relatively stable, not seeing a lot of big swings in values over the years. So here, our historical and current data set is based on the cost approach, relying on detailed characteristics, literally thousands of available adjustments. Properties within the reassessment period are then analyzed to determine market adjustment factors, which are applied to the depreciated replacement cost. This slide shows the top 25 property features the machine learning model resulted in according to their importance for our pilot project in Brandon. Now, we understand that machine learning models often have less, 12 to 15 variables that impact value in a measurable or meaningful way. So it's debatable here, but you can see that in this slide, 15 to 18 variables have any kind of measurable impact, and compare this to our current process, which includes thousands of variables. So don't worry, I'm not going to go through each model and the various results. And I'm also not the specialist for explaining all these variables or models either. I'm not a data scientist. That's why we have technical experts, and it's not me. For the pilot, our data science intern tested a number of different machine learning models. And after going through data pre-processing, model training several times, this table shows the accuracy of the various models according to a variety of ratios used to test accuracy and both horizontal and vertical equity of assessments. In the end, the final model that had the best results was the XG boosting model. It's shown on the bottom there, and it used 25 features to estimate property values. So there are a few ratios that are critical to meet IAAO standards, so the International Association of Assessing Officers standards for accuracy and equity of assessments, and the results of the machine learning model were equivalent or better than the manual process that we currently use. So in this pilot, the assessment to sale ratio, the ASR, the median was 1 versus 1.01 for the manual current model. The coefficient of dispersion, which tests horizontal equity, was very similar, and the standard for IAAO is 5 to 10, so very much within this standard. And then the vertical equity, which is tested through a price-related differential or a price-related bias, the PRD and PRB. Those values are also within the IAAO standard. So we had a very successful pilot when we looked at our results using those IAAO ratios. Implementing a new system of determining assessed values has significant considerations and potential risks. So while taking a substantial amount of effort, perhaps the easiest will be ensuring the machine learning models are producing accurate market value assessments. We can test those values to ensure that they meet IAAO standards that test how accurate our assessments are compared to sale prices. We also need to ensure assessments are fair at all valuation levels and different types of properties. Thankfully, there's a robust quality assurance testing that's available to verify the values meet IWO standards for vertical and horizontal equity. We believe the time saved in determining values will increase our capacity to conduct quality assurance and improve accuracy, fairness, and equity. Thirdly, the confidence and trust in machine learning models will be critical, not only of municipalities and property owners, but also staff that are used to a historical manual valuation analysis process. While we're not quite at this stage yet, the values will need to be explainable. This will be vital in building confidence and trust, ensuring we can logically explain how assessed values are determined. Our assessors typically don't go into the weeds and a highly detailed explanation of analysis of sales and determination of values with property owners. Rather, our explanations typically include providing both sales and assessment comparables of similar properties, which gives confidence that our assessments are based on actual transactions in the market and that the assessments are fair in comparison to their neighbors. The appeal system in Manitoba is typically not an analysis of our mass appraisal techniques. Rather, it's similar to fee appraisal, where we rely on a few of the best sales comparables of similar properties and utilize that market data to defend assessments, very similar to the sales and assessment data that we use currently to answer questions from property owners. And lastly, the human touch is critical. We're not looking for machine learning to replace assessors. It's another tool in the toolkit. It's not easy to attract assessors. Budgets are extremely tight. So how do we continue delivering our services without additional staffing and faced with increasing workloads? We also still need experts. Our assessors are highly trained, educated, and still play a vital role in our assessment process. Machine learning may help us do robust analysis, but we'll continue to need local knowledge and the expertise of the assessor. In summary, the considerations and risks of the current valuation process will continue to be important if and when we transition to machine learning valuation models. As long as we remain committed to accountability, transparency, and accurately reflecting the real estate market, we should be successful in mitigating risks and delivering highly trusted assessment roles. And now I'm going to turn it over to Paul. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks. Oops, hang on a second here. Sorry, got the Zoom thing overlapping my. Here we go. All right. Well, thank you. I'm excited to have this opportunity. Thanks for the invite. Thank you, Aidan. Thanks, Lloyd. Jason is coming up next, and to the AIC BC and organizers for putting this all together. So, my name is Paul Rayburn. I'm a residential appraiser located in Vernon, BC. And I'm happy to share some of my adventure path in this, work towards dealing with AI and being an appraiser. So, this scene from the Jurassic Park film from 1993 has always kind of stuck with me. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and slapped it onto a plastic lunchbox. There's a lot of question about AI and its use, and we're going to talk about that a little bit here. So just go to the next slide. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes discussing some high-level issues surrounding the use of AI. Then I'll bring us back down to the reality that almost all of us are already facing. AI isn't going away, and it will have a significant impacts on our daily lives and especially our work. Some have embraced it and are working to stay on the leading edge, while others are still getting up to speed. Regardless of where you are in that process, now is the time to learn more and begin planning your future of appraisal with AI. So I came across this recently published Pew study from the Pew Research Center on the public perception of generative AI and the ethical and social fabric implications. So I thought this might be relevant to the discussions. Interesting, you could see how U.S. is one of the most advanced countries in the development of AI, and yet they are the most concerned. So they're more concerned than excited. Um, and then you have Canada, I noted here, they are the least, more excited than concerned. So they're the least excited at 9% of people. So there you have Canada and the US sort of basically topping these opposite ends of that chart. Um, so, that brings in, some questions. One of the other things that was highlighted on this was the trust in governments and whatnot to regulate AI. So that is noticed as a big concern. Canada had fairly high trust, 64% trust versus 23% distrust in US. So anyways, that's not really my wheelhouse, but again, I did use AI to help me, weed through that report and highlight this information. So what's next? Well, to me, it is community. It is, and that's been a big part of my, mission is to help bring appraisers together as community. And that's a part of what brought Jason and I together, and maybe why I'm sitting here today. So, um, and I've noticed one thing. Again, I'm not a AIC appraiser, so I don't follow QSPAP standards, but USPAP standards for scenario has a specific, I paraphrase this, but USPAP encourages learning with peers via professional meetings, conferences, education, and appraisal discussion groups. So that was a quote out of it, but with some extra wording taken out. So as AI tools emerge, your duty is unchanged. Be competent, take needed steps. Okay, so that's advisory opinion number 37, and there's other, uh, uh, so I assume QSPAP has similar sort of wording. That's a part of the backbone of our standards and also the Achilles heel of standards is, what are our peers doing? And the only way we really know what our peers are doing is by talking to each other and getting together and sharing ideas and concerns. And so I think that crosses associations. That's just a standard professional issue, and it crosses borders. Uh, uh, as you'll see here, I've pinned George Dell's LinkedIn, and that QR code does links to George Dell's um, LinkedIn profile. And so um, I became involved with George Dell by following his blogs, um, and he would ask sort of pointed questions about assumptions that appraisers might be making, and he likes to come at it from a sort of a data science, evidence-based valuation, as he call it, approach. And to me, that was where he was raising, there might be a distinction between evidence and opinion. So that struck a chord with me, and I began following him. Took my first, he offers courses. Took my first course in, I think it was 2020 sometime. Um, and and once you take the first course, Stats, Graphs, and Data Science 1, then you're automatically, become a member of the community of asset analysts. So that brings us to the next slide. And to me, that was all what I sort of coined the term, the road to evidence-based valuation is paved with crushed assumptions. Um, so, it was a little bit like drinking through a fire hose. Um, you know, but that's where AI comes in. It could actually help you sort and organize data and do more comprehensive research more efficiently. So I think, some of the struggles that I went through, and maybe Jason could speak to that a little bit, and others that, when you start doing more of a scientific approach, sometimes you have to step back and put some assumptions that you were making aside, and that can be a difficult pill to swallow sometime. So, um, anyways, so we've got the community of asset analysts. So that comes, to where I'm talking about community. Getting together, appraisers, having discussions, sharing with each other what they're finding, and this has been amazing. They've really helped to build up my confidence with using more evidence-based, more, scientific approaches to appraisal reporting, and this is for residential appraisals. So um, it's a viable approach. Um, we get so we have meetings every second Friday. We have a second Friday of the month meeting where we get together and are there the first half of the meeting we set aside to help new members, graduated students of George's courses to help them get up to speed with using some of the code and whatnot we use. Typically, he starts you out using R and R Studio, which can be a lot to swallow, but we've got a community there to help. And for those that where that's not their wheelhouse, we are also supporting members to make um, other use other technologies, but it's the fundamentals of evidence-based valuation and just the fundamentals that go behind that. Um, so all right, so I think that pretty much covers that. And I've also another little term I've coined here is not all appraisers will be data scientists, and not all data scientists will be appraisers. So there's a range of professional crossover. There's the boots on the ground appraisers that get to know, the ins and outs of homes and what unique layouts and features and what's obsolescence, and what's excellent quality and what's average. What effect does renovations and whatnot have on the value of properties. But then how does that relate to the more scientific approach, from a data science approach? So and again, I don't think appraisers should expect to be data scientists, and again, you're not going to have data scientists who are going to be doing you know day-to-day appraisal, but in there building relationships between appraisers who can do more advanced analysis and maybe have some background in data science, interacting with the boots on the ground appraisers to help that community, that group, if you're going down that path, um, get to that next level and use a more evidence-based approach. So should they have this crossover? Should appraisers do more scientific of approach? Well, I say yes. I say there is room for crossover there. So, but all right. So that brings me to the next slide. We've got AI tools. So along with the LM models like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, et cetera, there are three main AI interfaces in two main categories. So you've got GUIs, graphic user interface, like web browsers, and IDE, like RStudios, you can see on the screen there, um, or VS Code interface. So that's just an interface of how you interact and run or edit or read the code. And then there's CLI. You might come across this as you're researching about how we can use AI to analyze our data, command line interfaces. And that's where you're effectively working right in your operating system, Windows folders, so that they're editing right in your files. And so I tie that together with GitHub, so you can learn a little bit about that. And as a version control, so as you start building out your own technology. So here's where I'm advocating for appraisers to bring themselves up to the next level and actually start building up your own technology. uh, so got a little slide here. Oh, for some reason, sorry guys. Okay, sorry, my little pen pointer thing was interrupting, but so I've just got a little video running in the background. um, And so this is Claude code running in my You can see it's working in my folder C drive, Git repos, column mapper, cvalr. And so this is a little application that I've built that helps appraisers map their data, typically MLS data, to a program. And so in this case, in our community of asset analysts, particularly, we've got a member there, Charlie Abramitis. So I'd like to shout out to Charlie, who's an AIC. He's works for City of London, Ontario, as an assessor. But he's shared a lot of information. But one thing people have a hard time is getting their code to run with this. So you can see how it just ran through there, and I just asked it to tell me about that app. So, um, and there you go. So I'll share with my slide decks. I've got some YouTube videos that walk you through how to do this. And sorry about that. Oh no. I'm a PowerPoint rookie. Okay, so that brings me to the last slide here. So I've got another little video here. So I thought, well, what else can I do to demonstrate it? I need a new laptop, and it's Christmas coming up. So I started looking through looking Best Buy's refurbished laptops for a good laptop, and there was tons of listings. And I thought, well, hey, why not just feed it into? And I fired up Gemini this time, so I downloaded a screenshot. Eventually, I just decided to download a copy of the HTML and let it parse the data and create a list. And I said, hey, why not create a shopping list out of that, and said I could send it to Santa. So I asked it this question. It was simple prompts. It was parse the data, create a list of laptops and features. Here's my existing laptop, compare it, and help me make a choice. So that was how I did it. So here I'm basically saying, build your own tools and build on community. And that's what I'd like you to have a takeaway from this, is that with AI, the ability for appraisers to, lift themselves up and lift each other up and take ownership in the technology and how we are able to use it and interact with it. Um, this is a real game changer. This is, I think we have an opportunity to take appraising and tools that we can use to the next level. So I'll pass it on to Jason, and he can share where he's at in his journey.
All right, thanks, Paul. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to dive in and give you some tips on advice on using AI in your appraisal practice. Since we only have about 15 minutes each here, and I could probably spend a couple hours sharing how I do various tools and things, so just wanted to give a quick snapshot today. So here's the agenda, along with a QR code for my LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with me. I'll have a few more QR codes coming up, so you can keep your phone handy if you want to follow those links. I saw Paul already had some QR codes, so maybe you're all warmed up already. We're going to talk about secure, confidential AI use, some practical tips, how you can use various tools, some real-world applications with ChatGPT and Google Notebook LM, and finally, we'll wrap it up with a discussion on critical thinking. So, but before we start, I want to give a shout out to a couple of experts that I've learned the most from online. First off, Roy Meyer. He runs a Facebook group, AI for Appraisers, and also posts regularly on LinkedIn. So you can scan the QR for his LinkedIn profile. I recently joined an ongoing training program that he runs, which is also called AI for Appraisers, that has weekly training sessions. And while Roy is US based, there are a number of Canadians in the group. It's been incredible to see what other folks are building. And even though I've only been in it for a few weeks, I highly recommend it. It's been really eye-opening for me. I won't go into more details, but he's worth a follow on LinkedIn or on Facebook. The other person worth a follow is Justin Gone. He also posts about AI and shows a lot of how he uses it. He does some great explanatory videos and is really at the leading edge of this too, but a little different angle from what Roy does. Paul was just showing some of the things with Claude Code, and that's what Justin really seems to be leaning into right now. So I haven't gone that far myself yet, but it looks pretty cool. So I'll also add my slide deck will be available later, so that'll be for distribution, so you don't have to worry about writing everything down here on these slides. You'll get a copy. First up, I want to talk about data privacy. That's always often on top of people's minds. So In general, it's safe to say that the free versions of all the tools like ChatGPT and so forth, they will train on your data. And while you can opt out, none of those tools will guarantee that they'll never use your data for training, even if you flip those switches. So only the real business enterprise paid tiers contractually guarantee that they won't do this. So before you upload any client info or confidential data, make sure you understand how it's going to be handled by the tool. So of the common platforms, I personally pay for ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity, each at about the $20 a month level, US that is. One thing I'm going to walk you through is how to opt out of having your data used for training with ChatGPT. So once you've signed up for an account, navigate over to the account settings, access data control options, and understanding and configuring these settings is your first line of defense in protecting your info. The settings menu provides access to some of the critical privacy controls that determine how your data is used. So take time to review these carefully. And you can also always ask ChatGPT what you can do to ensure privacy and confidentiality. So shown here, click Account Profile and Settings. Then click on Data Controls on the left. You'll see that the improved model for everyone is on. Click on that, so toggle that to off. So it looks like this when it's done. So this doesn't guarantee absolute privacy, but it's kind of a basic first step that you can do to minimize what you're putting into it to be used for training. So other tools are going to have similar screens, but this is the general idea, what you need to do to disable the tool from training on your data. So, but even if you do the steps I just described here, most AI tools will still retain your data unless you're on a higher tier plan. So it's not true confidentiality. They say humans can still review your data for safety or legal reasons. So even at the ChatGPT Plus, the $20 a month plan, they'll only give you true confidentiality on the Teams or enterprise plans where your data is encrypted end to end. The good news is those are only about $5 more if you pay annually, so about $25 a month. And the minimum is only 2 users, so it's not too bad that way. And Claude is similar. I recommend investigating this yourself, but I want you to be aware before you start uploading client data into these systems or MLS data, because that might be a breach of your MLS contract. For Google Notebook LM, it's a similar situation. If you sign up with a free Gmail account, there's no guarantees of privacy. If you are using a paid Google Workspace account, though, that greatly enhances the privacy of the data you put in there. So if you're not sure where to start with AI, I recommend signing up for a ChatGPT paid account. It's probably the best all-around tool. I also recommend the paid over the free for the reasons I've talked about, and I'm going to get into that a bit more later. But if you want to dabble with a free plan to start, absolutely, that's fine. Then if you're not sure what to do, ask it how it can help you. A simple prompt like I have here is a great first step. Say like, I'm a residential real estate appraiser just starting to learn about AI. How can you help me complete my job more efficiently? Or what information do you need to determine the best way to assist me? So that's a really great start, and you'll be surprised at how much detail it'll give you just from that. Another real good key, though, when you're prompting or entering questions, often the first time you'll get what you think is a pretty good answer, but in reality, it's probably a B grade answer. Ask it, rate your answer out of 100 and suggest how it can be improved. Most times, the machine will give you a much better answer by asking that, or what else is there, or is there anything you have missed? It'll go back and refine the answer, and it'll improve the quality. So it'll often move it to an A or A plus type answer at that point. I also suggest if you're not used to using these tools, have the tool open at all times on your desktop. If it's out of sight, you might not think of using it. So just even having it open or in a browser tab, that enhances the likelihood that you're going to use it. Another tip that I've learned that's really been helpful is using voice to text. That's been a huge help with these chatbot tools. It might feel a little bit weird talking to your computer, but since we can all talk faster than we can type, you may as well take advantage of that. And even if the translation gets the grammar or a few words wrong, it does an excellent job of figuring out what you meant. You can just really rattle off a stream of consciousness, and these tools will do a great job of figuring out what you want. So 3 tools I want to highlight for that. WhisperFlow is one. The basic version of that is free, works on Mac, Windows, and other platforms. Windows Voice Access, this is what I use since I have a Windows machine. You can talk into any program and it shows your words in almost real time. So the Windows key and H is the keyboard shortcut to get that started, to activate. There's also web browser extensions for if you use Google Chrome. There's one called Voice In that also works pretty well. So I want to go over a couple of use cases now. The first one is identifying building materials from photos. So I uploaded these 2 pictures and asked it to identify what kind of siding material it was in the first picture, and then what kind of roof cover was in the second picture. So ChatGPT correctly identified the siding as an architectural insulated metal panels, or IMPs, and the roof as modified bitumen. Even though there was some snow there and it was not the best quality picture, it it's a helpful tool for identifying materials like that. It's often a good idea if you're not confident in the output to then search up the term or what it gave you and ask Google for pictures or such, just to cross-reference there. That'll be a bit of a recurring theme in some of the things I'm sharing here today is cross-referencing and checking. Another good use case that I like is writing neighborhood narratives to give an overview of a community or a neighborhood within a city. So I have a prompt I've crafted using ChatGPT to help me, and then refined it to include some of the elements that I wanted. So this is not the entire prompt, but you kind of get the idea of the questions to ask and what things to tell it. So I also gave it a word count, specific things to look for, and what kind of tone to use. Another thing you can do is give it a sample narrative. AI tools work really well if you give them a sample. So if you have a good narrative for one neighborhood, copy paste that in and ask it to write you a similar narrative for another city or area. So here's the output that I got for the community of Niverville, Manitoba, where I live. I'm not going to read this all to you, but this kind of narrative gives you the essential information that I was looking for in my reports while maintaining the appropriate tone and length. Sometimes if you take a narrative from a community development or a town or city website, there's all these glowing terms and things like that. And as appraisers, we want to be a little more neutral here. We don't want to talk about what an outstanding economy there is locally. So moving on, another tool I want to highlight is Google Notebook LM. This one's a little bit more below the radar, and while ChatGPT and Claude are called large language models, this is called a small language model. So for this tool kind of helps appraisers deal with document analysis by identifying key data points and summarizing complex documents, which really reduces the time spent in researching. And so it's called a small language model because by default, it only looks at what you provide it. It doesn't conduct any web searches, although they recently did have the ability to include websites as sources. So in this case here, you can upload zoning bylaws, development agreements, or legal documents for court matters, such as statements of claim, and ask them to summarize them. Again, depending on your privacy settings and so forth. If you're using a paid account, if you're using a free account, make sure you're only using public documents. So here's an example I think we can all appreciate. AIC National is proposing some changes to the bylaws and the provincial affiliate agreements. And we can use this AI tool to help us analyze what the changes are. So I have a paid Google Workspace account, and I uploaded the current bylaws, the proposed updates, a change impact file, and the Canada Not-for-Profit Act. So you can see here there's three panes. The one on the left is the sources, so it's the PDF documents. The center is the chat, where you can ask questions, and it gives a little summary. First of all, as soon as you upload it, it prepares a summary and gives you some sample questions. And then on the right one is called the studio, and that's where you can make an audio overview, kind of like a podcast. A video overview, which somewhat like a slideshow, a mind map, and some other tools too. So there's a lot of cool things you can play with there, but I'll just focus on kind of the most practical ones today. So I clicked on a question at the bottom of that center pane and that asked, how does the updated director election process affect the role of provincial associations? So it gave a nice bulleted summary, and from the scroll bar here, you can see it's kind of, there's quite a bit more to than what's just on the screen here. So I encourage everyone to give this tool a try for themselves. Again, using public documents is perfectly safe here. Private documents, be careful. I know bylaw documents can be dry, and sometimes trying to figure out, okay, what are the real impacts here to a provincial association can be hard to figure out, but by asking those questions here, it can pull out some of the tools in here. So that's pretty cool that way. And Google Notebook LM is specifically designed to minimize hallucinations. It grounds its responses strictly in the documents and sources you provide, and answers only with information from there. And if an answer can't be drawn from the documents, it's supposed to respond with, I don't know, instead of making something up. So that's a real positive of this. And each answer includes citations, so you can verify the exact source of every statement. Here's an example of where things can go wrong using AI. I was given a picture of a receipt for a roof replacement at a building I was appraising. It had been downsampled so much time it was not legible. I couldn't make out the numbers or even the dates or anything. So I uploaded it to ChatGPT and asked it to show me all the text and details from this receipt. So first of all, I used the ChatGPT free version and I asked it those questions, show me all the details. The first interpretation suggested that it was a small roof repair job totaling under $400. And the AI confidently extracted specific details, dates, and amounts, and noting 2015 as the year the work was done. Less than $400 for a roof replacement seems pretty cheap. So I asked it to review the numbers. They don't seem accurate. It said, oh, good catch. The totals on the first transcription were wrong. I reread the receipt and corrected the numbers. So now it said over $600,000. And that seems pretty high for a 4,000 square foot building. And it still showed 2015. Again, this was with the free model. So finally, I logged into my paid ChatGPT Plus account, and this time it came back with these figures. Very different once again. And this time it said the work was done in 2020. So I asked it, how confident are you the numbers are correct? Hi, I'm 95% confident, and here's why I'm confident. The figures are large and clear in the scan, not faint or smudged. Could have fooled me, but glad the machine thinks so. The GST checks out exactly. It was exactly 5% of the subtotal. And that seems a lot more reasonable for me for the cost of a roof at about $23 a square foot in 2020 for a commercial building. So the bottom line, this was a unique use case that really helped me when I was given a receipt that I couldn't read, but I did get multiple responses depending if I was using the free or the paid account. So I do believe the last response, but I would always want to verify it. So I went back to the client and asked them, here, the receipt looks like about $92,000 and that the work was done in 2020, and they confirmed that sounded about right. So on a related note to this, excuse me, it got the math right here, but LLMs like ChatGPT are notoriously unreliable at doing math. So always double check the math it gives you. They look for patterns. They don't add or subtract like they should. So just a word of caution on that. So a few other things I want to talk about around critical thinking. AI can be a bit of a cheerleader. It can make you feel like you were brilliant. Be careful with that because it's going to tell you, excellent question, or that's a great suggestion, which is flattering, but it's not real. Hallucinations are real. From the receipt example I showed you, it can be confidently wrong. And finally, the human factor still matters. So I have another QR code on the screen. This is to an article on the tech website, theverge.com. It's written from the perspective of a programmer, but I think it applies almost as well to appraisers. To summarize it, though, the article says that AI-driven vibe coding is lowering the barrier to programming by letting non-engineers generate usable code with large language models. But the article argues this won't replace software engineering. It may cheapen the craft and undervalue the deep expertise that turns code into robust systems. So for appraisers, this means that it can allow for quicker data cleanup and writing the front half of the report, but your professional judgment still has to tighten the logic, verify the sources, and make sure that the conclusions are truly defensible. The one quote in this article that I really loved is this: the key is to use AI just enough to get past an obstacle and then toggle back to exercising your gray matter again. Otherwise, you'll lose the kernel of understanding behind the task's purpose. So when using AI tools, sometimes we can lean on them too much once we get started, sort of like the idea of not just enough to be dangerous. But it's important to take a step back and continue to apply your judgment when you use them. Don't blindly accept it or use it for everything. Use the tools where appropriate, but no more is my advice. So if you remember nothing else from what I shared today, the number one takeaway is to always focus on critical thinking. Don't go on autopilot and blindly trust and copy paste what the tools give you. Always verify the output by checking the sources or conclusions or the math. This is critical. Trust, but verify. And over to you, Aiden.
There we go. Thank you, everyone, for those presentations. I will open the floor to questions. I see we have a couple in the Q&A. Ron is saying, I know how assessments are done, but customers always say assessment is X, but appraisals is X plus or minus, and AI is great for complex math processing, but caution is needed and warranted, but needs to compare actual assessments to sale price of same property. Does anyone want to have a comment on that?
Sure, Aiden, I'll take a crack at that. And it's a good question, a good comment. It's really important, and that's why we will, we've only piloted the use of machine learning models in our property assessment. However, we're continually testing those pilots and the results using machine learning models against the IAAO standards for assessment accuracy, which is that assessment to sale ratio, and that assessment to sale ratio analyzes what the sale price is and the assessments that would be created using a machine learning model against that actual sale price. So it does compare those actual sale prices with the assessments that would be produced using the machine learning model. And then I'll just point out that, and that's why we hold back, or that's why in a proper machine learning model you would hold back a certain percentage. We use that 80-20 rule. So the 20% of sales are held back until that model is actually fully developed, and then you can test it. And so it's not that you're eliminating that bias from that model that you've created. But really good note.
Awesome. Thanks for that. The next is Alexandros. He's saying Whisper Flow doesn't work on Report Pro crawl. Does anyone know how to use AI tools in Report Pro crawl?
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll answer there. Yeah, and Paul can certainly add on. Using that Windows voice tool that I explained, Windows key and H, that has worked in every program I've tried. So that would be one I would suggest checking out. There's also the old school Dragon Naturally Speaking. I understand that's still out there. That was one of the first voice to text tools from way back. But those would be some I'd recommend. Yeah, Paul, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I don't think I would add too much more than that. Say the Windows Control H, I've actually just recently started using that. So, and yeah, I haven't found anywhere it doesn't work. But if it happens to not work, and I haven't actually tried it in Report Pro, I use that as little as possible. But other than just having a clipboard pad where you can copy paste, so you can talk into the clipboard, copy paste. Not quite as directly efficient, but it's an option.
Great. And we have Daryl who wants to forward to the presenters just a quick note for a better answer, a suggestion with ChatGTP, just this custom settings. You can add, of course, certain context. And he provides an example that you're an expert who double checks things, you're skeptical, and you do research. I'm not always right. Neither are you, but we both strive for accuracy. Yeah, I think we covered that. Dexter, I guess we'll move on. Dexter's asking, have you used Power Automate to catch receipts? Has anyone used?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I mean, Power Automate is. I'm not sure that that's the purpose of it is because that's more of a what you're talking about is a OCR technology effectively that's trying to turn images into text. But yeah, I don't know Power Automate inside out. I think it's more of a workflow um, system, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I would just note that at least from my experience, the OCR stuff is highly technical and doesn't always produce good results. So if anyone's interested in that, I would maybe suggest doing some research. Um, Moving on, Crengy's asking, is it realistic to ask AI to develop a discounted cash flow program for appraising multi-tenant commercial properties?
There's certainly people out there that have done such, and I understand Gemini. Was it Gemini? No, Claude. The latest model on Claude has really improved the quality of the math that and being able to build formulas in Excel files. So that again, you'd want to verify the results, but it sounds like that capability is coming there. So
Yeah, like I said, I've been using Claude Code and I do some fairly advanced code application building. And the general consensus is it's like there's almost nothing it can't do now. And you saw a little bit of what I did there in just a couple of prompts. It pulled out and was able to do some incredible work. So, by all means, like you say, try it out, check it out. Um, and I'll just add in there what I forgot to add in was when I'm using Claude Code like that in the command prompt, it's reading my local files locally, so it doesn't upload any data. So I can analyze MLS data, private data. It's all stays local on your machine, so it uses the AI technology to do the analysis and build code. So it'll actually build the code for like that that web scraping or the document scraping. It'll build the code right in your machine with Python or R or whatever, and right there on your machine. And then it's reproducible as well. So it's not, it's there on your machine. You could save that as an application and run it again. Um, low effort, low energy, low cost. You've already done the upfront brute work, so brute force work with the AI. So that's another, advantage of doing that local work on an application like that.
yeah, that's a good point, Paul. A tie on to that. I'm a big fan of building a tool that will work locally and allow you to have reproducible results. Some folks are promoting, using some AI tools even with proper privacy and so forth to upload your data into it and have it build a DCF for you or whatever the case. I'd rather have it build the model of how to build the DCF and then than build it myself locally so I can run it and test it and make sure that the results are accurate rather than relying on the tool to create charts for me or to do that. So
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. That's a highly recommended process. And yeah, sometimes there's application where it makes sense, to do something simple, quick, just feed it to it and get some information, get to the next step. But you might often find, and then you can use that information to start too. You could say, hey, give me that code that you created for that, and it'll give you as a base. You could download that and feed that to your to your LLM, uh, Claude code or whatever, and say, hey, here's what I started on. Build on top of this.
Great. And Travis is asking, can AI significantly increase report writing efficiency without coding experience? Not familiar with that.
Nodding heads. Yes, absolutely. I
yes.
think Jason and I would both agree that that's been my experience that and so
Yeah, one thing I would recommend is starting to develop prompts for, I guess, the specific sections of narrative that you want to go. Like I showed the example of the community description. Another one that I've got saved is one to develop the for the QSPAP rule around proposed public and private improvements in an area. So you can ask it to help you write the prompt and then save that, and then you just change the address or the location, and it will generate that. Or to figure out traffic volumes or bus stop locations and things like that. Some of the repetitive things that we do to look up. Those are good low stakes applications that you can do. So sometimes it takes a bit of refining to try to get the prompt to say what you want, and putting some word limits or character count limits so it doesn't give you a whole 3 pages on public and private improvements. But like say, give me 100 characters within half a kilometer radius or something like that. So those kind of ideas is what I would use to write some of that.
excellent.
Great. And it looks like we've got about 3 minutes, 2 minutes left. And no further questions in the Q&A box. Ria's just chimed in. Can we do more in-depth webinar on how these things that Jason was explaining? Can we do a more in-depth webinar on something like that, Jason?
Yeah, perhaps down the road, if I get invited back, then happy to unpack some of those things a bit more, a little more step by step. I realized we were going 60 miles an hour here on this due to time constraints, and again, the slide deck will go out, so hopefully that'll help a bit. But yeah, I'm open to that down the road.
Great. And with that, if there's no further questions, I want to thank all of the presenters for presenting today and for covering such an important topic. Coming up next, we have unpacking share sales in commercial property at 2:30. Again, please log out and join us again in 30 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks all.
Thanks so
you all.
much.
All right. Take care.